Hi, pretty girl. Mom has to record. Are you going to stay in here while I record? You going to stay in here with your mama? Well, I gotta close the door first then. Slide in and out of frame. Okay. Time for chapter 1093. Normally these would be out on Thursday, but the chapter was not up in time for me to be able to do the review on Thursday, so sorry, so you get it today. And you get Brenda in the background. Yeah, I know you're a cute, pretty girl. So, chapter 1093. First off, we have the cover page is just, it's Kobe and Helmeppo clearly having fun. And they had their glasses stolen by two Tertiaire brothers. They're a type of monkey. They're called a glasses monkey because it's like their general face shape looks like they're wearing glasses anyway. And they're pretty cute. I don't remember where they're native to. They might be native to parts of Japan, but I'm not sure. But they look adorable. Kobe is just like, can I have my glasses back? And Helmut was like, bring me back my glasses. And it just this kind of reminds me of, this actually just reminded me of, in The Road to El Dorado, there's the scene, the Trail We Blaze scene where Miguel and Tully are making their way through the forest to find El Dorado, and they get their clothes stolen by monkeys while they're in the hot springs. So that's kind of what that made me think of. Someday I'll do a review of the bunch of the different DreamWorks movies, and that will include Road to El Dorado, of course, and Prince of Egypt and a bunch of other stuff, but to One Piece. Actually, the next set of movies I will be reviewing are all the Miyazaki movies, so Princess Mononoke, sure. So into the actual chapter. So it's called Luffy versus Kizaru. Not like we haven't had that for the past several chapters already with Luffy and Kizaru dealing with each other. So we start pretty much where the last chapter left off, where Luffy is giant Luffy, and he's grabbed Kizaru out of the lab. And he's just like, Luffy's just like laughing, and everybody's just like, oh my god. And Luffy just like picks Kizaru up and he starts swinging him around. I think he did something like this with Kaido at some point in their battle. I don't remember, but he just like swinging him around. He didn't turn Kizaru into a jump rope. That'd be a light bright jump rope. But he's just like swinging him around, and Kizaru is like, "This is a pickle. Hey, now be gentle with me." And Luffy just like, it's okay, I'm just impersonating a rubber monkey boy that's a god throwing a laser at him. Okay. And just like curveball throws him as far as he can. Kizaru just gets sent flying, and Luffy's just laughing. And, he pretty much says, haha, he went flying. But the battle in the anime between Luffy and Kaido just finished up, so it's going to be a little while in the anime before we get more, Gear 5th stuff. We'll get a tiny little bit of it at the beginning of Egghead, and then we're not really going to get too much of it until we get to here, to this fight, again when we get to that in the anime, so that'll be kind of nice there. And in the previous chapter, Kizaru did mention that Luffy was the one that beat Kaido. And now it's like, now we just saw that come to fruition in the anime, finally. So we have that. But, so he just, sends Kizaru flying. And one of them is just like, we should use this chance to get out of here. And it's just like, leave Kizaru to Luffy. Don't know if that's Usopp or Nami saying it. One of the two is saying it. I'm not sure exactly. Or it could have been Vegapunk. So Atlas seems to be firing up her little jetpack, and Chopper's like, where are you going, Atlas? And she's like, to the lower stratum. I'm going to override the Pacifistas' current objectives. If I don't, we'll be fried by their lasers the second we drop the barrier. So this is, again, the Pacifistas are currently under Kizaru's control and have been told to fight alongside the Marines that are appearing on the island. So if, they need to get one of the Vegapunk down there to override that control. Again, unbeknownst to them, Saint Saturn is on one of the vessels and could be making his way to the island, because we'll see what happens there, where the end of this chapter is. And so Atlas is firing up her little jetpack that I love that she has. And they're just like, good thinking. Whoever controls this pacifista will win this fight. And I think it's Edison that's saying that. He's like, and no one on the island has a higher command authority status than us Vegapunks. I thought the initial setup for how they explained the Seraphim, or for the Seraphim and the Pacifista control system for the hierarchy, was it was whoever had the control chip, then Sentomaru, then the Vegapunks. And I thought it was the 6 Vegapunk satellites, and then they could be overridden by the Vegapunk Stella. I thought that was how the original setup was designed, which would make sense, because then, like with York, since, York went bad, York may have kind of been bad already, but York went bad, and if they send Vegapunk down there to override the command of the 4 Seraphim that they have trapped down there, then that should make things easier, and then they would just be back on their side. But I guess Vegapunk's Stella body can't override an order given by the satellites, which is kind of stupid in my opinion. That seems kind of like an oversight. But then again, there's a lot of things with the Seraphim that seem to be a little bit of an oversight. Grandma's just going to work. It's fine. You're fine. You're in here with me. So they're like, yeah, okay, so we have to go down and get the Seraphim, or the Pacifista, back under our control. And Vegapunk is just like, wait a second, Atlas, I'm coming with you. And they're just like, Usopp is just like, you think we're gonna let you go too, old timer? The whole point is to keep you alive. He's like, yeah, I know, it's just, and then he like yells into the Denden Mushi that Usopp is holding, Frankie-kun. And he's yelling at Frankie, and they're communicating. So we cut back down to where we see that Frankie and Lilith are okay. We see that the Sunny has been righted and is back up to how it's supposed to be, and that the Frankie Shogun is out. So that's probably what Frankie and Lilith had been doing for the last little bit while Luffy was dealing with Kizaru, is getting the Frankie Shogun out of the 1,000 Sunny, so that way they would be able to move the 1,000 Sunny, because I think the Frankie Shogun is probably at least strong enough to carry the 1,000 Sunny. Plus, I think, can the Frankie Shogun fly? I don't remember if it can fly, or at the very least fly for short distances. I do not remember. That is not something I remember off the top of my head. So we see Frankie and Vegapunk talking again, and it's just like, Vegapunk calls down, and he's just like, it seems Bonnie was knocked down to the lower stratum. Can you confirm? And Frankie is like, yeah, she survived. She survived, that's great. Kizaru kicked her face first into the barrier, and then Vegapunk is just like, how could a strapping young lad like you let that happen to That's just funny. How could a strapping lad like you help that? Not allow her to be kicked in the head into a laser grid. You're the one that designed the laser grid in the first place, dude. This is not my fault. And Frankie's like, my bad, I'll go help her. I'll go help her right away. But the barrier's still up. And they're just like, and then we cut to where we see Jinbei and Sanji. So we get them paired up. We haven't seen them. We haven't seen Sanji since he put Kaku in a bubble. Which I still find hilarious. It's like, this whole stuff is happening with Kizaru right now, and like Lucci's off battling Zoro and everything. And Lucci and Kaku's just probably like sitting in the corner, just like, this is the life I chose. I'm trapped in a bubble inside of a brilliant scientist lab while the Straw Hats fight against the Marines. And their captain, who is now a giant and has white hair and clothes, and a weird drum beat that always accompanies him, is fighting an admiral. And he just threw him like a baseball. What has become of my life? It's like that's what's going through Kaku's head right now. It's probably what's going on. How did I get here? Like, just that's just like going through Kaku's head, because he's just like an observer at this point in time until he gets out of the bubble. Until someone lets him out of the bubble. Do you want out? Is that what you want? She'll be back. Well, come on. There you go. Pretty girl. Mama got to record. And yes, you're very cute. Are you an observer? But you're not in a bubble, are you? No? What's a bubble? I'm not a giraffe man. Back to the story. So we see Sanji and Jinbei have been sent to go and retrieve some different things, probably some of the things that Vegapunk wanted to have put onto Thousand Sunny, so that way they could take them with them. So they're in second floor building A, so they're still in the middle building, but they've gone down a level or two. And they're like, hey, this is Sanji. I went in on this Bonnie rescue mission. Of course he does. And then Jinbei is just like, Vegapunk, I've got everything you asked me to bring aboard. I'll head to the back exit. Let's all rendezvous there. So they were sent to go and deal with that. Probably just gather up some of the different inventions that, they want to take with that Vegapunk wants to take with them that he thinks could either be very useful to the Straw Hats or could just be useful in general. So we got that. Then we cut back down to the Phobos fabrication spear where all of the Marines still are running around all of the different futuristic city. And they're just like, stay away from the city center. Jury Bonnie must be close by. And then we cut to where we see what is kind of basically a recreation of the moment at Sabaody where Bonnie releases her powers for the first time and on a group, and we see a bunch of baby Marines and old guy Marines. And they're all there. So it's like, it's a call back to that, which I love. And it's just like, be on your guard. She could be hiding anywhere. And we just like see all the Marines going, what's going on? Oh no, or they're all like crying like little babies. And it's just like, if you're careless, she'll age warp you. And then we see Bonnie hiding in the rubble behind some stuff. And she's just like, damn it. And they're like, if you find her, blast her to bits. And she's like, we've spotted Sentomaru. He's been burned to a crisp. And we see Bonnie look over at Sentomaru, and we get this tiny little flashback to where we see how she had like fallen from the labosphere, hit the laser grid, and fell down. And how it was Sentomaru who caught her. And he's the reason she didn't, just land into all of the rubble and everything. And as durable as humans are, that probably would have still caused a fair amount of damage to Bonnie. So Sentomaru managed to catch her, and he's just like, Bonnie, get out of here. The Marines are coming. Which, and she seemed very concerned about Sentomaru. And we also see this is again something that is being pointed out to us throughout the course of the Vegapunk chapters, through the Egghead Island chapters, is that Vegapunk has these connections to Stussy, to Bonnie, to Kuma, to Sentomaru, to Kizaru, and they're what I've dubbed the Vegapunk bunch at this point in time, not including the different, not including the Seraphim and the satellites. But all these, Sentomaru and Bonnie would have known each other. Kizaru has indicated that he knows Bonnie, and now there's definitely this confirmation that at least Bonnie and Sentomaru have some form of a connection. Considering how long Sentomaru has been around Vegapunk and training to be his bodyguard and everything, that makes perfect sense that, depending on how long Bonnie and Kuma have known Vegapunk for all of that time frame, Bonnie and Sentomaru may have, for all intents and purposes, played together as either kids or young teenagers, running around Egghead or running around wherever Vegapunk was based out of at that point in time. So that makes sense that they would have some form of a bond. Also, Sentomaru may have figured out that, okay, Bonnie's not wanting to attack, Grandpa Punk anymore. He doesn't want to hurt, Vegapunk. She doesn't want to hurt Vegapunk anymore. Her goals have shifted. Also, the fact that Bonnie has used her Devil Fruit power has just completely obliterated the idea that she is one of the, Katarina Devon in disguise. Because while Katarina Devon may be able to mimic someone's physical appearance, and in certain cases, depending on what her Devil Fruit is capable of, mimic someone's power, I don't think she would be able to actually mimic aging someone up or down. very easily without it being a very, very intensive amount of power involved or a very, 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 very intricate trick. Could still technically be done, but I don't think it's something that she would be capable of, even with a mythical Kitsune. Devil so Bonnie is not Katarina. And considering the fact that Stussy sacrificed herself for Vegapunk probably means that she's not Katarina either. So we'll knock those ones out of there. If Katarina and Lafitte have managed to intervene. So Bonnie is just like, what should I do? Can I hide until the heat dies down? Because like there's still all the different Marines and she has to get back up to the Labosphere. So that way she can, get to everybody else and escape with them, because if she stays on the island, then they're going to hurt her. So then we cut back to the Labostratum, where it's kind of outside the Labostratum, where we see Luffy is still laughing, and then he's just like, oh, Zoro, you guys are really going at it down there. And it's like we cut down to where we see Zoro fighting against Lucci, and Lucci is in his, awakened leopard zone form and everything like that, and fighting against Zoro, and Zoro's using Suntory, or he's using his three-sword style against him, so Zoro's not really holding back necessarily, and Luffy's like, hey, you need a hand, and he's just like, yeah, you just focus on Kizaru, it's fine, I can handle this guy, I can handle the Catman, and he's just like, if this is the best he's got, it shouldn't fall to the captain to handle him, and Lucci, because he's Lucci, it's just like, is that so? Well, then I suppose the head of an emperor's number 2 is still a decent consolation prize. So he's like, yeah, I'll still take care of Zoro, and then I'll be all good, and I can at least take his head back to the world government and everything like that. It's still something. I mean, probably not quite the equivalency of like bringing King back to the world government, but still definitely a fair amount of, gonna cause problems. And get you a good amount of clout there. So then we cut away from the island, where we see that Kizaru is still flying. Where we see that Kizaru is still flying toward the water, and he's just like, at this rate, I'm going to take a dip in the ocean. And he just like adjusts his, I guess, flying pattern. I mean, he is made of light, so it would make sense that while he may not be able to travel 100% at the speed of light, or at the very least make himself the exact weight of light, which technically light weighs nothing, he should at least be able to modulate his, weight to where he would be able to, adjust his, where he's not going to fall directly into the ocean, and then activate his power, which we see him do. And he just lets off a huge amount of lasers, which again, that propulsion would be able to push him away from the ocean. So he's not going to land in the ocean, and he just lets out this huge array of lasers of his, Yasakani no Magatama? I don't remember. It's one of his different sacred jewel attack things, or his references to the sacred treasures of Japan. So he's like letting loose all of these different lights, and they're all heading back toward the island, and Luffy is watching this, and he sees all of these different lights coming at him, and then he's just like, oh no. Luffy's like, oh no, why are there so many? It's like, Kizaru has now used agility. How many clones does it look like there are of Kizaru? And can you figure out the real one? And that's basically kind of what I thought when I saw this. It's just like, yep, Kizaru. There's just like, we see a bunch of different clones. There's 5. We see at least like 6 of them. And then there's clearly more of them. And all of them activate the Ame no Murakumo. It's the last remaining of the Imperial relics of Japan, regalia of Japan. It's the last one that they're referencing there. And one of them, or several of them, activate their swords, their laser swords, and they start attacking Luffy. And Luffy starts, gum booming dawn whip, and like just like slashing through all of them and knocking them out. And then we have this funny bit where Luffy is being chased by them. And because Luffy's brain, and I love Luffy's brain, he's like, more hollow ghost. Which one's the real one? And there's a double reference in this, because it's Luffy seems to be conflating the holograms that Vegapunk made, the dragon and stuff like that they encountered earlier in the holographic food, with Perona's devil fruit ghost, with her, hollows that pop up when she summons them and everything, and like, her negative hollows. So it's like, it's a double reference there. So it's just like, oh no. Which is just funny because like it has been so long since Luffy has seen Perona. Yes, she was with Zoro when she returned him to Sabaody, after the 2-year time skip, but Luffy didn't see her there. Or at least I don't think he really interacted with her there. And it's not like he's had any other reason to interact with her since then. He may not even know that technically Zoro spent the 2 years of the time skip, or the 2 years training on the same island where Perona was. I don't know, even the Straw Hats did talk about it. Zoro's like, you'll never guess where I landed. Oh, where'd you land? I landed on this really moody island that just had weird, creepy, twisted trees and mountains and a castle. And the ghost girl from from Punk Hazard was there. The one with the weird ghost that can make you feel bad. Oh, yeah. Yeah, she was there. She turned me into a mummy. And then Mihawk was there. And it was just like, does Luffy know about this? Did they have like a whole day where like a whole bunch of the Straw Hats just like sat around and told each other what happened while they were on all of their, solo leveling adventures and everything like that for the 2 years? Did that happen at some point in time? Did Nami ask all of them about all of these different islands that they went to? That would be an interesting thing. It was just like, Nami's like, okay, tell me about the island you were on. And then like, she like maybe has like a basic description of the island, and she's using that for some stuff in her, in her maps. For like later on down the line when they end up actually hopefully going to that island at some point in time for her to actually like see it and draw it and everything like that. I don't know if you want to go to the Bowling Archipelago, but it could happen. Because, Nami's map of the world. But back to this. So Luffy is being chased by... Luffy is being chased by all of the different Kizaru clones. And he's just like, oh no, this is not good. And he's just like, gum gum, booming Dawn Whip. And he just like sends his whole leg through, definitely coated in armament hockey, because we can see it in the picture, through all of them. Like, it's like they're all lined up, and he just like Odysseus with the 20 axes lined up and the arrow and everything like that. That's in the end of the Odyssey and everything, for how he proves he's Odysseus. Like how he does that. Luffy kind of does that to all of the different Kizarus, and just like stabs through all of them and everything. And they're just like, oh no, did I take out the real one too? And he looks down and he's like, oh no, because there's like an explosion by the lab, and he's like, oh no, he's back there. And Luffy's got his eyes bugging out, and he sees down on the lab, where we see that Kizaru has arrived in the lab, and Brook, Nami, and Usopp are all trying to deal with him. He has Usopp held up by his chin. Nami has her, I don't think we see Zoo. She just has her climb attack out, and it's got some lightning on it. And we see Brook is there as well. And he's just, Usopp's just like, oh no, he got me. And they're just like, Luffy, like, help. And I think his Kizaru is like, how strange. Vegapunk's not here. And Luffy's like, ugh. And Luffy's like, okay, well, I gotta go deal with him. So then we cut down to where we see Vegapunk and Atlas, and it looks like Sanji is hanging onto the outside of it. It is this, it's called the Vegatank. Vegatank 8 is what it's called. And it is this like bubble, so it's probably made of the very similar stuff that the different bubbles that are around, like that's from Sabaody and stuff like that. So it's a reference back to like the bubble mobiles and stuff like that they had on Sabaody. And they have, it's like a bubble, but it's got like a little, seating area in it, control space, and then on either side of it, it looks like there's these two pinwheel things coming off of it that also look like they kind of have bubbles as part of their design. And they're going down, and Sanji is like hanging onto the outside of this thing, trying to get down to go with them and everything. And they're just like, and Sanji's like, what's gotten into you? You look like you're gonna burst a blood vessel. No good. And then I think it's Vegapunk that's like, no good marine brigands, don't you dare lay a finger on her. And it's clearly he's talking about Bonnie, because then in the next panel he's just like, hang on, Bonnie, I'm coming. I'll be damned if I stand by while a little girl gets murdered. again, this is just this thing that Oda keeps doing where he keeps calling back to having Bonnie referred to as a little girl or as a child or something like that, which again, Vegapunk is in his 70s, if I remember correctly, and we don't know the ages on all the Gorosei, but Saint Saturn at least seems to be in his 60s, if not possibly 70s as well. And, Kizaru is Kizaru in his late 40s or his early 50s? Kizaru is in like that range there, but like okay, I'm 31, and which means I'm older than most of the Straw Hats except for Frankie and Brooke, and Jinbei. That is a revelation. That's a revelation. But and I still look at some people where it's just like, that wasn't long ago, but it's just like, oh no, that was like, the 90s were like 30 years ago, and I was just like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, and it's just like, and then it makes you feel old, and it makes other people that are like young now are just like, oh, now I just feel older, and it makes you seem young. So I kind of understand where that's coming from, but like Oda keeps doing this thing where he keeps calling back to having Bonnie referred to as a little girl or a child or something like that. So I don't know exactly how they're going to have that remedied. Since Bonnie can manipulate her age via her devil fruit, obviously, and we've seen her do it so many times throughout the series, there is always the possibility that she might be like, I think she's like physically supposed to be like 22 or 24 years old whenever she's in like the form that we see her in, mostly her, young adult form. And Brenda's just standing in the hallway. Yeah, I said your name. Are you going to come back in here now? Hi. Pretty girl. And I don't know how they're going to explain that. I mean, like, it could just be that it's just like, it's a bunch of older guys or ones that are more have a frame of reference to Bonnie for being like a kid into any other interaction they've had with her for the most part. And they're just, she grew up so fast, or she's such, she was a child the last time we had any interaction with her, or things like that. So that's always a possibility. And I just realized I forgot to close the shade over in the corner, but it doesn't make a difference because it's not very bright outside right now. But one of the things is, Bonnie could still be, she could be still like, she may not be like the full 24 or 22 years old that she like appears to be. She may be closer to like 18, and she's aging herself up a little bit to throw people off, which is quite possible. Or she could actually be around that right age. She just, makes herself a kid at different points in time. And the fact that we don't know how long she's had her devil fruit. We know she's had it for at least 2 years, probably longer than that. At least maybe closer to like 3 years at the least amount of time, considering, she became, one of the supernovae. Admittedly, part of her bounty might stem from the fact that like they figured out who her father was, that she was Kuma's daughter. In retrospect, it may have come from that. But she had to have made a name for herself to a degree before that anyway. So back to that. Back to the actual this. Luffy is like, oh no, Grandpa Apple Grimps, don't go down there, you're gonna get yourself killed. And he's just like, oh no, that's not good. And Kizaru just has like perched himself on the rubble, and he's like firing down at the Vegatank bubble thing that is adorable. And he's just like, and where do you think you're going, Vegapunk? And he fires down at that, and Luffy jumps in front of the beam, and it looks like it goes into his mouth and then out through his eyes and his nose. I'm slightly surprised Oda didn't make it look like it was coming out of his armpits, but that's not quite the way it works. But like it goes into his mouth and it comes out through his eyes and his nose is what it looks like. And he's just like, my eyes, it's so hot and everything. But Luffy, like, I mean, he's a sun god, so there has to be some correlation. And he, like, looks like he gives off fire. And he's used fire before for his, Red Hawk and everything. So, and he's, built up that type of thing where he's had firepower before, where he's been somewhat, not 100% immune to fire attacks, but at the very least, somewhat resistant to him. Like when he got hit by Big Mom with Prometheus and everything during that battle. So he's given some indications that he is able to do this. Also, I wanted to point out, back to the Kizaru thing with Kizaru making all of his clones, before I go back to this, sorry. I wanted to point this out before. And so Kizaru making his clones actually makes a lot of sense, because light, obviously he can produce a lot of light, and then even though they all can technically have a power of their own, as in like they can use their powers themselves, they're all just basically like a replica of him. It is like, you do a mirror replica of thing and they all move the same way. It's like using a prism, and they can all move the same way. That makes sense. But that's not the first opponent that Luffy's had to battle before that can make a clone of themselves. That was Doflamingo, who made the clone of himself when he made Luffy fight the clone of himself. Doflamingo made Luffy fight a clone of Doflamingo, not a clone of Luffy. That would have been a little more interesting at the time. But made Luffy fight a clone of Doflamingo, because Doflamingo, of course, can use his powers to create his string and then use that string to make the clone and make the clone act exactly like him. So that's not really surprising that an admiral that has a Logia type power would be able to do that. I mean, we saw Green Bull, we saw, Green Bull, Ryukoku back during Wano, at the end of Wano, which we should be getting to pretty soon in the anime. But when he showed up, he, made all of these, all the plants grow and everything like that. But he also basically ended up, replanting himself after he was, destroyed. And if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if he would be able to make clones of himself. And while they may not be exactly as powerful as himself, as his true body, they would still be a force to be reckoned with. We saw that with the Doflamingo clone. It still took Luffy quite a while to be able to beat the Doflamingo clone. So it makes sense that Kizaru would be able to do something somewhat similar, but on a bigger scale. Akainu, in regards to the other admirals, Akainu maybe be able to make like a magma version of himself, but I don't know if that would work quite so well. Fujitora can't really make a clone of himself. His version of a Paramecia doesn't really work that way. But Kuzan, Aokiji, him being able to make some form of an ice clone of himself that would be able to move wouldn't be all that hard to understand, or wouldn't be all that hard to picture, but I don't think that falls into something that he would do. Also, as has been pointed out, all three of the different main admirals of the original admirals are all, based off of, the Momotaru legend, with all of the different animals, with, the blue pheasant, yellow monkeys, and red dogs. And Aokiji does have his pheasant peck, which is a reference to the blue pheasant. Akainu has his red dog attack, where it's like the giant lava dog that happens. This may be the closest thing we may get to Kizaru having a yellow monkey type of attack, where it's like him making all of these different clones, and we won't know until we get the anime, where if each of them still looks exactly like him, with like all the way down to like they all have like the same coloring, or are they all going to be like appear to be like just like various shades of yellow, and including the real one kind of looks to be a various shade of yellow just to like blend in with the others. And this might be the closest thing we get to like him having like this monkey type of an attack. I just wanted to point that out there. I meant to mention it earlier with the clones, but I wanted to point that out. But back to this. So Luffy having the power to do somewhat negate, or at least be resistant to the lasers, is somewhat understandable. He absorbs this, and like the lasers get shot out, but they do not hit the Vegatank. And then we see that the Vegatank is driving by where the Thousand Sunny is, with Frankie, Lilith, and the Frankie Shogun are there. And Frankie has grabbed onto the Vegatank. I don't see Sanji. Sanji might already be inside of it. I see Vegapunk and I see Atlas. Sanji might be in there. I'm not sure. I can't tell. But Frankie has grabbed onto the Vegatank as well, and he's hanging onto it. And he's just like, Lilith, use use General Frankie to get the ship out of danger. And she's like, got it. So, and like we see the Shogun is open, so Lilith is probably going to go in there. And while the Frankie Shogun is not nearly as big as Vega Force 1 or the giant robot, which we don't see in this chapter, but the giant robot, it should be able to at least do somewhat of moving the Thousand Sunny. Still got to figure out some of that stuff, but we'll see what happens. We cut to where we have the the Egghead port, where we see all the Marine ships are still there and everything, including the one where Saint Saturn is. But we see that that they're sending like this broadcast: urgent update: Dr. Vegapunk is attempting to leave the labostratum and head down. And they're just like, oh no. And we see Edison, who is still up in the labosphere where the others are dealing with Kizaru at the moment, or where Luffy is dealing with Kizaru at the moment. He is like, okay, stand by to deactivate the Frontier Dome, and we can reseal it in a jiffy right away. They right after they pass, and they're just like, okay, like we see the Vega tank get through, and we see that I think it's Atlas that's giving the command, and she's just like, you know, we see her in a minute where she has like her finger in her ear giving out the command, or like shouting out to the different pacifista. She's like, all pacifista units come in. This is an override command from Vegapunk. Your new mission is to eradicate every last Marine on the island. And we see the the pacifista is like clicking into it and like hearing it, like, okay, new objective, moving away. And we see Saint Saturn there as well. And, you know, it's like, are the tides about to turn? So it's just like, is Saint Saturn still on the ship for his own safety? Or is he going to be making his way to the island? Or, and we get a break next week, so that's fun. But, so there is the option there. And the one option that I kind of thought of was that, well, some of the Marines, you know, some of the vice admirals may be somewhat something he's not willing to 100% sacrifice and everything in regards to their goals to get a hold of the Seraphim and the power plant and York and the Mother Flame stuff. Saint Saturn may be willing to let most of the other Marines die and be injured before he even does anything, because then that's fewer people that would witness him turning into whatever his power, his, you know, transformation is. And he would be, you know, fewer people that they have to make forget about it or disappear, depending on how well known that transformation is to people. Given Sabo's shock of seeing Gorosei transform in the first place, I am going to assume that they are actually, that it's not actually all that well known that they can transform into these different creatures or entities type things, or blobs, depending on a certain circumstance. So that part I'm not, that part is kind of what I'm thinking there. And it may just be he stays on the ship until all's taken care of, and then he may go. The other option, obviously, is he comes out of the ship, and in order to fully test this, you know, Seraphim hierarchy thing, the Seraphim and Pacifista hierarchy thing, is he walks out and then, you know, shouts out to the Pacifista, this is St. J. Garcia Saturn of the Gorosei, highest authority in the world. I command you to no longer listen to the Vegapunks and to fight alongside the Marines. And that is your order. And he could very easily do that. But we don't know exactly how that will play out. We will have to wait and see. And we have to wait 2 weeks at the very least. But, yeah, so that was, I mean, I really like the Vega tank. The Vega tank is adorable, and I want one. It's so cute. I love how he's using the bubble technology, and clearly the Vega tank is a reference back to like the different bubble gondola type things that they had at Saba Odi and all of that. So there's that. But it will be, you know, we'll see what happens. I think Luffy's gonna be fine even after he took that like head-on laser attack from Kizaru. He'll probably get knocked out of Gear 5th pretty soon. And I'm pretty sure Luffy can handle, or Zoro can handle Lucci pretty well on his own. I don't particularly see that being a huge issue for that to be taken care of. But it will be interesting to see how, you know, because Luffy, he did take damage. He did take damage from that attack from Kizaru. But we'll see what happens. And again, you know, maybe someone will pick up the bubble gun and fire the bubble gun at Kizaru and trap him in the bubble. And then he'll just have to sit and be an observer next to Kaku for a little while. They'll just both be like sitting there in the bubble, like, oh, this is fun. Kizaru, I was just following orders. Lucci, or Kaku, yeah, me too. Me too. So, I don't know exactly how that's going to play out. We'll have to wait and see. The bubble gun is still an option to try to use on Kizaru, but we'll have to wait and see exactly what they end up doing with that. They may not think about that, or Sanji may run back into the room and he may still have the bubble gun with him and he may fire it at Kizaru. We'll see. Oh, wait, no, that can't happen because if anything, Sanji's in the Vega tank right now, and I'm not sure if he's in the Vega tank or what. So the bubble gun may not be with them up in the lab, but I would like to hope that there's at least another bubble gun somewhere that they can use to then fire at Kizaru and then trap him in the frickin' bubble. So we'll see what happens there. But that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, sorry it's out about a day late, but between the chapter coming out late and my work, that did not go well until I was able to do it this morning. So I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!